Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles, and here are tonight's headlines. Torrential rains across Southeast Asia have led to widespread flooding, causing significant damage and loss of life. Central Europe is bracing for days of potentially catastrophic rainfall, with flood warnings issued across several countries. Meanwhile, the White House has ruled out any immediate policy changes regarding Ukraine or the use of long-range missiles. National Security Advisor spokesperson John Kirby clarified that there will be no shift in the U.S. stance on providing Ukraine with long-range strike capabilities for use inside Russia. Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin has delivered a clear message to the West about the consequences it will face if it allows Ukraine to hit Russian territory with Western long-range missiles. The news starts now. Torrential rains across Southeast Asia have led to widespread flooding, causing significant damage and loss of life. In Laos, authorities have issued flood warnings for residents living along the Mekong River in Vientiane. The Mekong River Commission has reported rising water levels in Luang Prabang province, affecting areas in Vientiane and neighboring Thailand. Myanmar has also been hit hard by floods triggered by heavy rains. The capital, Naypyidaw, has experienced significant flooding, displacing thousands of people. Schools have been closed and residents are being warned of rising water levels. The humanitarian situation in Myanmar is further complicated by an ongoing armed conflict and a crippling economic crisis. Many people in need of assistance are unable to access aid due to restrictions and security risks. Typhoon Yagi, the strongest storm to hit Asia this year, has also contributed to the flooding in Vietnam and Thailand. The storm has claimed the lives of over 230 people and causing widespread damage.
There is general consensus amongst the scientists that tropical cyclones are getting more intense, that tropical cyclones are getting wetter, that storm surges are increasing, which is due to the combination of the cyclone being more intense and sea level rise. So those are three factors that we generally agree on.
Take Typhoon Yagi, for example. It intensified very quickly before striking Vietnam.
It was relatively weak, but it rapidly intensified as it passed the Philippines and went onto its way to Vietnam. And that's extremely remarkable to see typhoons undergo such rapid intensification in that region.
There is no scientific consensus yet around how climate change is impacting the number of storms in a season. But the timing of storms is changing as warmer temperatures, even in winter months, create the conditions for more intense storms to develop.
We published a paper where we looked at how the chances of a very strong tropical cyclone are changing under climate change. And what we saw was that in the Western North Pacific, and specifically in this region where Yagi also occurred, are that these chances are substantially increasing under climate change. And then we're talking 5 to 10-fold increases compared to present climate.
The world has already warmed 1.3 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial average.
Central Europe is bracing for days of potentially catastrophic rainfall, with flood warnings issued across several countries. Poland, Austria, and the Czech Republic are among the nations facing the brunt of the impending deluge. Forecasters are predicting up to 15 centimeters of rainfall in some areas. In Poland, Prime Minister Donald Tusk has urged residents to remain calm while authorities prepare sandbags and activate emergency services. The Polish Institute of Meteorology and Water Management has raised the highest alert level for several regions. Austria, too, is on high alert. Heavy rains and snow have already caused travel disruptions, and the government is prepared to deploy up to 1,000 soldiers. The Czech Republic, scarred by devastating floods in the past, is taking proactive measures to protect its cities and towns. The Vltava River, which caused significant damage in previous floods, is being closely monitored. Authorities have implemented flood defense measures, including closing off the Devil's Canal in Prague.
Připravujeme se na ty nejhorší scénáře, ale jak už jsem říkal já, jak tady zmínil pan ministr Hladík, máme výborná data, máme lepší data, než jsme měli v minulosti, ale přesto nemůžeme úplně přesně predikovat tu situaci a proto děláme všechno, abychom byli připraveni na jakýkoliv scénář.
Meanwhile, severe flooding has devastated Nigeria's northeastern Borno state, affecting up to 1 million people. The floods, triggered by heavy rains and a dam overflow, have caused widespread damage and displaced thousands of residents.
A low dam located at a few miles from this town collapsed in the middle of the night and has caused massive flooding in this town.
Authorities are working tirelessly to rescue survivors and provide emergency aid. Local officials say this is the worst flooding in the state in 2 decades. While casualty figures have not been released, the National Emergency Management Agency reports that 229 people have been killed by floods in Nigeria this year. The flooding has particularly impacted Bakassi Camp, which was once home to tens of thousands of people displaced by the Boko Haram insurgency. The camp was closed last year, but has now been reopened to accommodate flood victims. Hong Kong journalists and their families are facing a growing wave of online and in-person harassment.
I noticed that it's affected 15 organizations in total, including 13 international and local media outlets, large, medium, and small-scale ones, as well as HKJA, and 2 other institutions that are in the activity of journalism education. Other than HKJA, this campaign has affected Hong Kong Free Press, In Media HK, and HK Feature.
The Hong Kong Journalists Association has documented numerous cases of intimidation and threats targeting journalists and their associates over the past 3 months.
So the main form of harassment comes from people who proclaim themselves as patriots. These people would send anonymous complaints by email or by letter to journalists' family members, their family members, employers, landlords, or other related organizations, including charities, schools, and private businesses. We noticed that this has affected at least 15 journalists. Many of those letters and emails say that if this organization or party continues to associate with the journalist or their family member, then they could also be endangering national security, violating laws such as Article 23. We noticed that there's been a surge of trolls on Facebook. They posted hateful content against media outlets and journalists, portraying legitimate reporting as problematic or even illegal, and accused their articles of being inflammatory. So according to what we've counted and investigated, at least 36 journalists have been identified by those posts from multiple different outlets, education institutions, and the HKJA. In at least 4 of those cases, these trolls used Facebook and Wikipedia to make threats of violence, including death threats.
In the U.S., with only a few weeks left until Election Day, mail-in ballots are already being distributed. Former President Donald Trump took a break from his campaign to defend his association with a 9/11 conspiracy theorist and to propose deporting Haitian immigrants with temporary protected status in Springfield, Ohio, despite their legal residency. When asked about his relationship with far-right activist Laura Loomer, who has been traveling with him recently, Trump refused to distance himself from her. Loomer, known for making inflammatory remarks and claiming 9/11 was an inside job, attended recent 9/11 memorials with Trump. In a post on social media, Trump stated that while he disagrees with Loomer's remarks, she remains a private citizen and a loyal supporter. Trump also continued to spread false claims about Haitian immigrants in Springfield, suggesting they were causing trouble despite being in the U.S. legally.
I can say this, we will do large deportations from Springfield, Ohio. large deportations. We're going to get these people out. We're bringing them back to Venezuela.
Today, some schools in Springfield were evacuated due to bomb threats. And during Tuesday's debate, Trump intensified his rhetoric, falsely alleging that the immigrants or that the migrants were eating people's pets. President Biden condemned Trump's comments.
I want to take a moment to say something like so many Americans, like Karine, as he pointed out, a proud Haitian American community that's under attack in our country right now. Simply wrong. There's no place in America. This has to stop what he's doing. It has to stop.
As the election nears, Vice President Harris made her 12th visit to Pennsylvania, stressing the importance of earning every vote and connecting with key communities.
You'll remember that night I talked about issues that mattered to families across America, like bringing down the cost of living, investing in America's small businesses, and keeping our nation safe and secure. But that is not what we heard from Donald Trump. Instead, it was the same old show, the same tired playbook we've heard for years, with no plan on how he would address the needs of the American people.
Democratic U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris leads Republican Donald Trump 47% to 42% in the race to win the November 5 presidential election, increasing her advantage after a debate against the former president that voters largely think she won, according to the results of a Reuters Ipsos poll released on Thursday. But the poll found voters continued to favor Trump over Harris on economic issues.
Yeah, so, obviously everyone was waiting in anticipation after the debate to see where the polls would land. And what we're finding right now is a lot of stability, right? We find at the national level that Harris is in the lead relative to Trump. But on those key fundamentals issues like the economy and inflation, Trump ultimately has the lead. So, it's really Harris coming out of the debate with those vibes, with a lot of energy, doing a good job based upon a lot of the polling that's out there. But ultimately, Trump still holding on to those oh-so important fundamentals.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War.
She improved her numbers on the top line by about a point. That's in the margin of error. So we say it's stability, but it's some sort of movement there. She holds about even on the issues, as we were saying, more specific with the economy. And so really, at this point, we're at a stasis moment where at the national level, she's in the lead, but things have not really changed all that much.
I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
Harris's, in my mind, number one objective going into the debate was to show herself to be presidential, to be a statesperson, and she did that. She did that very well. And there's a large contrast when you look at the polls writ large, not just the Reuters poll, but in general. There's a story there which basically says she came across as statesmanlike, and Trump did not. That's important, and that's really important because what she also wanted to do was among those undecided, those 5% or 7%, really depends on how you measure it. That small swath of voters who have not decided, she wanted to give them pause, a time to reflect and think about what their vote would be. And once again, across the board, whether it be specifically with this Reuters poll or more generally in terms of what we're seeing, she was able to do that.
On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics.
It was not a good debate for him. So he did not make inroads in the principal points for him, which were inflation primarily and immigration. He leads on both. That's very important. But painting her as Biden's successor, painting her as sort of the representative of the party in power that ultimately was responsible for inflation, high inflation, which is on the minds of Americans. He did not make inroads there. He did not do that in a very efficacious way during the debate.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back.
If Biden is any leading indicator of the problem with age, ultimately it can be a drag. And elections are about contrast, they're about choices, and setting up a choice between a very able, agile, younger candidate versus one where there's questions, especially because his adversary stepped out because of that, is not good. I wouldn't say it's the primary issue driving people's thought process, the voter calculus, but it isn't a good thing for the Trump.
Meanwhile, Haitians in Springfield, Ohio are feeling uneasy after Republican Vice President nominee J.D. Vance and Donald Trump spread false claims about immigrants eating pets. City officials deny the rumors, but tensions have risen with some Haitians facing harassment and considering leaving.
Haitians living in Springfield, Ohio say they're on edge after Republican Vice President nominee J.D. Vance amplified false claims about immigrants there. The small city of 62,000 is in the national spotlight as Republican politicians, most prominently Trump at this week's presidential debate, spread baseless rumors that immigrants were eating the area's cats and dogs. City officials say there have been no reports of anybody eating pets. Springfield has seen some 15,000 immigrants from Haiti arrive in recent years. It has reshaped the city after a half-century of decline, offering some promise of economic revival along with growing pains. Wages have surged with rising number of job openings, though the city's schools and health clinics are under strain and rents have risen. What has not risen is crime, according to interviews with a dozen local, county and city officials, as well as police data. The derogatory claims are weighing on Haitians in Springfield. This is Rose Tamar Joseph, the secretary of the local Haitian Community Help and Support Center.
Since Monday, after the tweet of the Senator Vance, the Asian community in Springfield are a little bit shocked and frustrated. And a lot of them are maybe talking about leaving Springfield.
Mark, who didn't want to reveal himself on camera or share his last name, said he's been harassed at work.
I quitted my job like last week because I was harassed, retaliate, even like they tried to demote me because as a guy, employees would call me fucking Asian, call me bitch at work, and the company didn't do nothing. And I think it is not good. But I don't really feel like actually I'm welcome in Springfield.
Tensions rose after a Haitian driving without an Ohio license struck a school bus in 2023, killing 11-year-old Aiden Clark and injuring 26 other children, which Trump and Vance have also brought up this week. At a city council meeting on Tuesday, Clark's father, Nathan Clark, told the campaign to stop using his son's death for political gain.
They can vomit all the hate they want about illegal immigrants, the border crisis, and even untrue claims about fluffy pets being ravaged and eaten by community members. However, they are not allowed, nor have they ever been allowed to mention Aiden Clark from Springfield, Ohio. I will listen to them one more time to hear their apologies. To clear the air, my son, Aiden Clark, was not murdered. He was accidentally killed by an immigrant from Haiti. This tragedy is felt all over this community, the state, and even the nation. but don't spin this towards hate.
On Thursday, Springfield's government evacuated City Hall following a bomb threat. Several police cars were stationed outside the hall, which otherwise showed no signs of disruption. Springfield Mayor Rob Rue told local media the threat came from someone who claimed to be a local resident and mentioned frustration with immigration. Hours later, Trump continued his unfounded claims against Springfield's immigrants at a rally in Arizona, claiming they were, quote, walking off with the town's geese.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un met with top Russian security official Sergei Shoigu to discuss strengthening strategic dialogue between their countries. That is according to state media KCNA. What does this deepening partnership mean for regional stability? In photographs released by KCNA, Kim is seen holding a bilateral meeting with Shoigu and later sending him off at the airport on Friday. But what were the key takeaways from their discussion? They reportedly had a wide exchange of views on regional and international situations and reached a consensus on enhancing cooperation to defend their mutual security interests. The U.S., Ukraine, and independent analysts have raised concerns suggesting Kim is supplying rockets and missiles to Russia for its invasion of Ukraine in exchange for economic and military support from Moscow. Both Moscow and Pyongyang have denied the claims, but have pledged to boost military cooperation, signing a comprehensive strategic partnership at a summit in June. Relations between Russia and the UK have reached a new low, with Moscow expelling 6 British diplomats. An analyst warns that this could lead to a complete severing of diplomatic ties.
Russia expelled 6 British diplomats on Friday for alleged espionage. Moscow's FSB security service said it revoked their accreditation after accusing them of sabotage and spying. Russian state TV named the diplomats and showed these images of them. It's an apparent display of Kremlin anger over London's support for Kiev. The expulsions come ahead of talks in Washington between British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and US President Joe Biden. The Allies are forecast to discuss letting Ukraine strike deeper into Russia with Western missiles. President Vladimir Putin warned on Thursday that such a development would alter the scope of the conflict and mean the West would be directly fighting with Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Friday the expulsion of the diplomats was not an effort to cut ties with London.
Obviously, relations between the UK and Russia could barely be worse.
However, James Nixie of Chatham House said the two powers appeared a step closer to severing relations.
But we're not quite there yet. But it does seem to me as though the UK does and always has done drawn a specific particular level of ire from the Russians.
The Izvestia newspaper cited the FSB as saying that the British diplomats had recruited Russian teenagers, organised what it called provocations, and held talks in the British ambassador's Moscow residency with opposition figures. The FSB, the main successor to the Soviet KGB, said it considered the activity of the expelled diplomats as, quote, threatening the security of the Russian Federation. Britain said Russian accusations against its diplomats were baseless and that it followed British action taken, quote, in response to Russian state-directed activity across Europe and in the UK.
The U.S. would impose sanctions on 3 entities and 2 individuals connected to a Russian campaign of destabilizing countries around the world. That is according to U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken. Now, Blinken told reporters at the State Department that the Russian broadcaster RT was involved in the campaign and had moved beyond being a media outlet to include cyber capabilities, citing new information, much of which, he said, came from RT employees.
In addition to imposing sanctions, visa restrictions, and other measures, the State Department also designated the Russian state-funded and directed media company, Rossiya Segodnya, and 5 of its subsidiaries, including RT, under the Foreign Missions Act. As a result, these actors are now required to notify the State Department of all personnel working in the United States, as well as their property. They are engaged in covert influence activities aimed at undermining American elections and democracies, functioning like a de facto arm of Russia's intelligence apparatus. Today, we're announcing that these Kremlin-backed media outlets are not only playing this covert influence role to undermine democracy in the United States, but also to meddle in the sovereign affairs of countries around the world. Thanks to new information, much of which originates from RT employees, we know that RT possess cyber capabilities and engaged in covert information and influence operations and military procurement. As part of RT's expanded capabilities, the Russian government embedded within RT a unit with cyber operational capabilities and ties to Russian intelligence. RT's leadership had direct, witting knowledge of this enterprise. For years, RT and its employees have coordinated directly with the Kremlin to support Russian government efforts to influence Moldova's elections, including the October 2024 presidential election. RT's leadership has leveraged Russian state-funded and directed media platforms to attempt to foment unrest in Moldova, likely with the aim of causing protests to turn violent. We believe RT will almost certainly leverage its expanded covert capabilities to coordinate with Russian intelligence services to try to manipulate the outcome of Moldova's upcoming election. As a result of these findings, today, we're imposing sanctions on 3 entities and 2 individuals for Russia's covert global influence operations. Today, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada are launching a joint diplomatic campaign to rally allies and partners around the world to join us in addressing the threat posed by RT and other machinery of Russian disinformation and covert influence.
As Ukraine grapples with the ongoing war, its workforce has undergone a dramatic transformation. With millions of people displaced and men mobilized for military service, businesses are facing a severe shortage of skilled labor. Now, in response, women are increasingly stepping into traditionally male-dominated roles, such as truck driving, agriculture, and construction. Take a look.
Lilia Shulha has landed her dream job after years in what she described as boring, sedentary office work. Now she drives trucks with Ukraine's leading retailer, Fozzy Group. Ukraine has lost more than a quarter of its workforce since Russia's invasion in 2022, central bank data shows. And businesses are hiring more women in traditionally male-dominated roles. Childcare is in short supply though, and Shulha had to move back in with her parents for help with her 2 teenagers.
Yes, people are curious and shocked when they see me. They film me on their phones when I deliver or load my lorry. They take pictures of me, whether it's passers-by or others, they're all in shock. Soon there'll be more of us, and people won't be that shocked anymore. Soon, it won't be news anymore that women work in such professions. Then people will leave me alone.
Millions of people, mostly women and children, have fled abroad, and tens of thousands of men have been mobilized. Reuters spoke to representatives of 9 Ukrainian companies who found that staff shortages and a growing mismatch of skills were big challenges. In the agricultural southern region of Mykolaiv, women like Maria Korolenko are being trained as tractor drivers, as well as tram and truck drivers, coal miners, security guards and warehouse workers, companies say.
I understood how necessary it was for me to work, not only for me and not only for my family. Right now, unfortunately, the men are being taken away. More and more of them are being taken away, and it's so hard. Now we do all the work that the boys used to do. When the war is over, when we win, the guys will come back and give us holidays.
Businesses have raised wages and are hiring more retirees and teenagers. Vodafone has repackaged its youth program to bring more young people on board. Ilona Voloshina is head of training and development in Kiev.
Right now, we're feeling the shortfall even more. If we look at the numbers from last year, around 40% of our specialists have left our shops. So we're feeling the lack of the workforce in the market.
The government and foreign partners have launched several programs to help Ukrainians reskill. But analysts expect the jobs crisis to persist and warn it could endanger post-war recovery.
Thousands of Boeing workers in Washington state have gone on strike demanding higher pay and improved working conditions. The strike, the first for the company in over a decade, comes as Boeing faces increased scrutiny following recent safety incidents.
Boeing faces a major strike. Some 30,000 workers at its West Coast factories voted Thursday on a new pay deal and on whether to walk out. Unions say 96% voted for a strike. That set the stage for a stoppage to begin early Friday. One worker said Boeing had brought the problem on itself.
It just feels like they're trying to put a little bit of pressure on us. And that's just not the way you want to act towards your employees if you really want us to work for you and build a quality plane.
It's the first such walkout at the aerospace giant since 2008, and it could hardly come at a worse time. Boeing was already struggling to increase output of its best-selling 737 MAX jet, following a mid-air blowout on one of the type earlier in the year. That incident put the firm's quality control under renewed scrutiny from watchdogs, coming after 2 fatal crashes of the jets some years earlier. The pay deal offered to workers included a 25% increase and a pledge to build Boeing's next commercial jet in the Seattle area. Union leaders had recommended voting for the package, which the company said would guarantee jobs for generations to come. But many workers responded angrily, arguing for the originally demanded 40% hike. Speaking after the vote, International Association of Machinists President John Holden said Boeing would have to do better.
Boeing has to stop breaking the law, has to bargain in good faith, and we will be back at the table whenever we can get there to drive forward on the issues that our members say are important. Congratulations, machinists.
Now it all marks a big test for new Chief Executive Kelly Ortberg, who was brought in last month with a mission to restore faith in the firm.
Strike! Strike! Strike!
He had sent a letter to workers urging them to support the pay deal, but to no avail.
Pop star Justin Timberlake appeared in court to resolve his drunk driving charges. The singer pleaded guilty to a reduced charge of driving while ability impaired, avoiding jail time. Timberlake was arrested in June after running a stop sign. Police suspected he was under the influence and reported that he refused a breathalyzer test. The singer admitted to having a single martini. As part of his plea agreement, Timberlake has agreed to release a public service announcement emphasizing the dangers of driving under the influence, even after consuming just one drink.
Many of you have probably been covering me for a lot of my life. And as you may know, I try to hold myself to a very high standard for myself. And this was not that. This was not that. I found myself in a position where I could have made a different decision. But I've had some time to reflect on that. And I also understand by, the fact that all of you are here, that I have a platform, you have a platform, we share that platform. And so what I'd like to say to everyone watching and listening, even if you've had one drink, don't get behind the wheel of a car. There's so many alternatives. Call a friend, take an Uber. There's many travel apps. Still, take a taxi. This is a mistake that I made, but I'm hoping that whoever's watching and listening right now can learn from this mistake. I know that I certainly have. And like I said, even one drink, don't get behind the wheel of a car.
Additionally, the judge has ordered Timberlake to complete 25 hours of community service within the next year and pay a $500 fine. The World Health Organization has given its green light to an Mpox vaccine for the first time, offering hope for increased access to the vaccine in Africa, where the outbreak has seen more than 20,000 cases this year. The MVA-BN vaccine, developed by Bavarian Nordic, has been pre-qualified by the WHO and is already approved in Europe and the United States for adult use. The WHO approval is expected to accelerate vaccine access for millions, helping to reduce transmission and contain the outbreak. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus emphasized the importance of this step in the fight against Mpox both in Africa and globally. The vaccine is administered as a 2-dose injection given 4 weeks apart for individuals over 18 years old. The WHO's pre-qualification will expedite procurement by governments and international agencies like Gavi and UNICEF, and can also speed up regulatory approval in countries worldwide. As an emergency measure in severely affected regions, the WHO recommends a single dose of the vaccine, which has been shown to be 76% effective. The 2-dose regimen offers an estimated 82% effectiveness. Staying in Africa, in a shocking development, a military court in the Democratic Republic of Congo has sentenced 3 U.S. citizens to death for their involvement in a failed coup attempt. The trio, along with dozens of others, were convicted of criminal conspiracy, terrorism, and other charges. Take a look.
3 U.S. citizens were among 37 defendants sentenced to death by a military court on Friday for their role in a failed coup in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Armed men briefly occupied an office of the presidency on May 19th before their leader, U.S.-based Congolese politician Christian Malanga, was killed by security forces. His son Marcel Malanga was among the Americans on trial, along with Marcel's friend Tyler Thompson, who played high school football with him in Utah. Both are in their 20s. The third American, Benjamin Zalman Paloon, was a business associate of Christian Malanga. All 3 were found guilty of criminal conspiracy, terrorism, and other charges, and sentenced to death in a ruling read on live TV. Malanga had previously told the court that his father had threatened to kill him unless he participated. He also told the court it was his first time visiting Congo at the invitation of his father, whom he had not seen in years. The Americans are among some 50 people, including U.S., British, Canadian, Belgian, and Congolese citizens standing trial following the failed coup.
Malaysian police said they will summon the top management of an Islamic business group after children rescued from charity homes allegedly run by the firm suffered injuries consistent with sexual and physical assault.
Saya perlu memberitahu bahawa daripada siasatan di Negeri Sembilan, seorang perempuan telah pun dituduh di PD semalam di Poliksen, Mahkamah Poliksen di bawah Seksyen 31-1A atas pengabaian, penganiayaan dan pendedahan kepada kanak-kanak.
Police this week rescued 402 children and youths in raids carried out at 20 premises that they said were operated by Islamic conglomerate Global Ikhwan Services and Business, or GISB. Inspector General of Police Razahordin Hussein said police will call up GISB's board for questioning and did not discount the possibility of further arrests or raids on premises linked to the group. He didn't say when they would be summoned, citing pending investigations. He also added that authorities have screened 392 children who were being held in police facilities, while those who were sick or with special needs had been transferred to the Welfare Department and Health Ministry for further care. NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams have expressed their gratitude for extra time on the International Space Station despite the delay in their return to Earth due to technical issues with the Boeing Starliner. The Starliner spacecraft landed successfully in New Mexico in September after a 3-month test mission plagued by technical problems. Now this forced Wilmore and Williams to remain on the ISS until next year. When asked if they felt disappointed by Boeing, Wilmore responded that they absolutely did not.
Let down? Absolutely not. Never entered my mind. I don't think Sonny's either until you mentioned it. It's a fair question. I get it. Obviously, when you have an issues like we've had, there's some changes that need to be made. Boeing's on board with that. We're all on board with that. And I can tell you, when you push the edge of the envelope again and you do things with spacecraft that have never been done before, just like Starliner, you're going to find some things. And in this case, we found some things that we just could not get comfortable with putting us back in the Starliner when we had other options. There's many cases in the past where there have not been other options. We were very fortunate that we have the space station and that we had the option to stay and we had the option to come back a different way if that's what the data showed. I think the data could have gotten there. We could have gotten to the point, I believe, where we could have returned on Starliner, but we just simply ran out of time. It was trying at times. There were some tough times all the way through. You certainly, as the commander and the PLT of your spacecraft, you don't want to see it go off without you, but that's where we wound up. And through all the process, most of the news we heard, as we would hear things over the news waves and the different means that we have to get information up here, that 80% of the time you'd hear Sonny and Butch, Butch and Sonny, Sonny and Butch, Butch and Sonny. And I just want everybody to know how much we appreciate that.
Looking forward to being able to vote from space, which is pretty cool. You asked what we miss, right? Of course, you know, the things that we always miss, our families. I miss my 2 dogs. I miss my friends. But you know what? Like Butch said, there are so many people on Earth that are sending us messages, and it makes you feel just right at home with everybody when we're able to have those conversations with our friends and family at home.
NET25, your trusted source for global news, keeping you informed every day. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back Monday. Until then, good night.